A couple posed with their kids, but the photographer saw something wrong. Welcome to Alcott Stories, dear dreamers and thrill seekers, where every story is a journey and every ending will leave you breathless. A warm hello to you. Before we begin, take a deep breath, because what you're about to experience will tug at your heartstrings, send chills down your spine, and maybe, just maybe, change the way you see the world. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Today's story. We have something extra special for you, a tale of love, deception, and a mother's fight to remember. But be warned, this story is a roller coaster, and the ending, well, you'll just have to watch till the very last second to believe it. A small request. Promise me one thing, stay until the final moment, because the biggest twists hide where you least expect them, and I need you to experience this one fully. Deal? Why your presence matters. Every like, comment, and share helps us tell more stories, stories that move, haunt, and inspire. So don't be shy. Let me know you're here. Drop a in the comments if you're ready for the ride. Let's begin. Turn up the volume, lean in close, and let the magic of storytelling sweep you away. This is Alcott Stories, where every tale changes you. Enjoy. The golden afternoon sun spilled through the canopy of ancient oak trees in Meadowbrook Park, casting dappled shadows over the lush grass, where Lucas Bennett, a strikingly handsome man of 30, with piercing blue eyes that held both warmth and a quiet intensity, knelt beside his wife, Amara, her rich brown skin glowing under the sunlight, her intricate braids cascading down her back like a crown of woven onyx, each plait adorned with tiny beads that caught the light like scattered stars. The air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and freshly cut grass, a perfect backdrop for the family photo shoot they had planned for weeks, a celebration of their twin boys' first birthday, Eli and Noah, two bundles of boundless energy with their mother's deep cocoa skin and their father's bright, curious eyes, now giggling as they squirmed in their parents' arms, their tiny fists clutching at the fabric of Lucas's crisp white shirt and Amara's flowing sunflower yellow dress. Lucas's strong arms encircled Amara's waist, pulling her close as he pressed a tender kiss to her temple, his lips lingering just a second longer than necessary. A silent promise of love that needed no words, while Amara leaned into him, her heart swelling with a joy so profound it nearly stole her breath, her fingers brushing against the soft curls of Noah's hair as she whispered playful nonsense into Eli's ear, eliciting a squeal of delight that echoed through the quiet park. Nearby, Claire Dawson, the photographer, adjusted her Canon lens with practiced ease, her keen eye already framing the perfect shot. The way Lucas's thumb traced absent circles on Amara's hip, the way Amara's laughter crinkled the corners of her eyes, the way the twins' tiny feet kicked in unison, as if they, too, were caught in the rhythm of their parents' love. "Beautiful," Claire murmured, snapping a rapid succession of shots, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to break the spell of this perfect moment. "Just one more, guys. This light is magic." Lucas grinned, his teeth flashing white against his sun-kissed skin, and pulled Amara even closer, his voice a low rumble that vibrated against her shoulder as he teased. "You heard the lady, love. One more, and then I'm stealing you away for that picnic I promised." Amara rolled her eyes playfully, but obediently turned her face toward the camera, her smile radiant, though a flicker of something unreadable. Nostalgia? Longing? Passed through her dark eyes As she glanced down at the twins, her heart clenching with a love so fierce it bordered on pain. The breeze picked up, sending Amara's braids dancing around her face, and Lucas reached out instinctively to tuck a stray strand behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheekbone in a gesture so intimate Claire felt like an intruder. Yet she couldn't look away, her finger hovering over the shutter button as she captured the raw, unfiltered emotion between them. The twins, sensing the shift in energy, grew still for a rare, precious moment, their wide eyes locked on their parents as if they too were memorizing this fragment of time. Claire took the shot, the perfect family, suspended in golden light, and lowered her camera with a satisfied sigh, already mentally composing the caption for her portfolio. Love defined. But as she scrolled through the preview images, her smile faltered. Something was off. Zooming in on the last photo, her blood turned to ice. There, just visible beneath the rolled-up sleeve of Lucas's shirt, was a tattoo she recognized, a black serpent coiled around a blood-red rose, its fangs bared. Her breath hitched. She had seen that tattoo before, in a police bulletin 3 years ago, beneath the headline, "Have you seen this man?" Her hands trembled as she glanced up, her pulse roaring in her ears. Lucas was now whispering something to Amara, his lips brushing her earlobe, and Amara was laughing, but Claire no longer saw a loving husband. She saw a predator. And the woman in his arms? She might not even know she was prey. The park, once serene, now felt suffocating, the cheerful chirping of birds morphing into a sinister soundtrack as Claire forced a smile and handed Lucas his phone, her voice unnaturally bright. "These are gorgeous. I'll, send the rest soon." But her mind was already racing. Who are you really, Lucas? And does Amara know the truth? The twins babbled innocently, oblivious to the storm brewing behind Claire's eyes as she packed her gear with robotic movements, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't just a photo shoot anymore. It was a rescue mission. Claire's fingers tightened around her camera strap, the leather biting into her palm as she forced a smile that felt like shattered glass against her lips, her mind racing with the horrifying realization that the man standing before her, Lucas Bennett, with his disarmingly charming grin and those ocean blue eyes that had seemed so warm moments ago, might be the same monster described in the missing persons reports she'd pored over during her late-night research binges, the ones that had kept her awake with their chilling details of women who vanished without a trace, their last known connection always a charming, blue-eyed stranger. The afternoon sun, once golden and inviting, now felt like a spotlight exposing her panic as she watched Lucas tousle Eli's curls, the toddler giggling as he clutched his father's thumb with tiny, trusting fingers, while Amara adjusted Noah's sun hat with a tenderness that made Claire's chest ache. Because if she was right, this woman had no idea she was living with a wolf in sheep's clothing. The tattoo, that damned serpent and rose tattoo, taunted her from the camera's preview screen, its sinuous lines unmistakable even in the pixelated zoom, and Claire's breath hitched as she recalled the grainy photo from the news article. Suspect last seen at a gas station with the 24-year-old Layla Martinez, who remains missing. Her pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the cheerful babble of the twins, and she fumbled with her equipment bag, her hands slick with sweat as she fought to keep her voice steady. These are stunning," she lied, the words ash in her mouth, her gaze darting to Amara's face, searching for any sign of fear, any flicker of recognition that something was wrong. But the woman only beamed, her braids swaying as she leaned into Lucas's side, her free hand resting on his chest like he was her anchor. God, she trusts him completely, Claire realized with a jolt of nausea, and the weight of what she might have stumbled into pressed down on her like a physical force. The park around them, so idyllic moments ago, now seemed full of hidden threats, the rustling leaves whispering warnings, the distant laughter of other families twisting into something sinister. Lucas tilted his head, his brow furrowing as he studied Claire's face, and for one heart-stopping second, she swore his eyes darkened, his grip on Amara tightening almost imperceptibly. "You okay?" he asked, his voice laced with faux concern, and Claire's skin prickled as she recognized the practiced smoothness of a man who knew how to manipulate. "He's on to me." Swallowing hard, she nodded, her throat dry as sandpaper, and blurted out the first excuse she could think of. Just realized I'm late for another shoot." Her voice was too high, too frantic, and Amara's smile faltered, a flicker of confusion crossing her features as Claire shoved the memory card into her pocket with trembling hands, her mind already spinning plans. "I need to get to the police. I need to—" But then Noah let out a squeal, reaching for her with chubby arms, his innocent trust a knife to her conscience, and Claire froze, torn between fleeing and staying to protect this family from a danger they didn't even see. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain, and in the distance, thunder rumbled, a fitting omen for the storm about to break. Claire's car door slammed shut with a hollow thud that echoed through the empty parking lot as she fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking so violently she nearly dropped it twice, the screen illuminating her pale face in the dimming twilight as she frantically typed, "Missing person, Layla Martinez serpent tattoo suspect," into the search bar, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps that fogged the windshield as rain began to patter against the glass in a relentless rhythm that matched the pounding of her heart. The first article that loaded made her stomach lurch. Vanished without a trace. Family pleads for answers in Layla Martinez disappearance, accompanied by a photo of a smiling young woman with braided hair and warm brown eyes that were unmistakably Amara's, though the name beneath the image read Layla, not Amara, and the date stamped below was 3 years ago, a lifetime before the happy family photos Claire had just taken. Her thumb scrolled desperately, skimming over details that turned her blood to ice. Layla had last been seen at a diner off Interstate 90 with a charming blue-eyed man who paid in cash, and the only lead was a security camera still of his forearm, the serpent and rose tattoo coiled menacingly beneath his rolled sleeve, its fangs glinting under fluorescent lights. "Oh God, it's him," Claire whispered, her voice cracking as she zoomed in on the pixelated image, the tattoo a perfect match to Lucas's, the realization hitting her like a physical blow as thunder cracked overhead, the storm now raging in sync with the tempest in her mind. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to reconcile the loving father she'd just witnessed, the way Lucas had cradled Noah against his chest, humming a lullaby under his breath, with the monster described in the article, a man who'd allegedly manipulated multiple women before they vanished. A sudden knock on her window made her scream, her phone clattering to the floor as she whirled to see a park ranger peering in, his brow furrowed with concern, his mouth moving soundlessly through the glass until she rolled down the window, the scent of wet asphalt and ozone flooding the car. "Ma'am, you all right?" "You've been sitting here for 20 minutes, he said, his flashlight beam flickering over her tear-streaked face, and Claire opened her mouth to spill everything. "That man in the park, he's a killer, and that woman doesn't even know who she is." But then her gaze landed on the twins' discarded sun hat in her back seat, the one Amara had absent-mindedly handed her to hold during the shoot, its cheerful yellow fabric now a stark reminder of the lives hanging in the balance. What if I'm wrong? What if I get her killed? Swallowing the confession, she forced a smile. Just a migraine. I'll head home now." As the ranger retreated, Claire snatched up her phone, her resolve hardening as she screenshot the article and opened her contacts, hovering over Detective Mark Reyes, a name she knew from covering true crime cases for her photography blog. The text she typed was deliberate, her thumbs steady now. "I think I just photographed Layla Martinez. Alive. With the suspect. And twin babies. Need to meet ASAP. No police radios. He might be listening." Pressing send, she stared at the rain-smeared park entrance, where Lucas's SUV had disappeared an hour ago, her mind racing with horrifying possibilities. Had Amara, Layla, ever tried to run before? Did Lucas keep her locked away when guests weren't over? Were the twins even hers? The memory of Amara's soft laughter as she'd nuzzled Noah's cheek replayed in her mind, and Claire's breath hitched. She loves those babies. That part's real. But as she pulled out of the lot, her headlights cutting through the downpour, a darker thought took root. What if Lucas took her to replace the family he'd destroyed? The GPS on her screen blinked. 12 miles to the police station. But Claire hesitated, her finger hovering over the detour button. "First, I need proof, and I know exactly where to get it." Turning the wheel sharply, she merged onto the highway, the wipers slapping furiously as she sped toward Lucas and Amara's neighborhood, the address still saved in her client files. The clock on the dash read 8:47 p.m. They'll be putting the twins to bed now, she thought, her grip tightening on the wheel. And if I'm right about Lucas, he'll be waiting for me to slip up. The rain intensified, the world outside dissolving into a watery blur, but Claire didn't slow down. Somewhere ahead, in a house with curtains drawn, a woman who didn't know her own name was tucking in babies that might be the only thing keeping her alive. And Claire was the only one who could save her. The rain had turned into a relentless downpour by the time Claire's car rolled to a stop 2 blocks away from Lucas and Amara's suburban home, the windshield wipers struggling against the deluge as she killed the engine and sat in suffocating silence, her fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the steering wheel, while her mind replayed the article's damning words. Layla Martinez was last seen with a man matching this description, considered armed and dangerous. The neighborhood was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that made her skin prickle. The only sounds the distant hum of a garage door closing and the occasional flicker of blue TV light behind curtained windows. But Claire's gaze was locked on the 2-story house at the end of the cul-de-sac, its warm golden porch light glowing like a false promise in the storm. What am I even looking for? She thought, gripping her camera bag like a lifeline, her earlier bravado crumbling under the weight of reality. She wasn't a detective, just a photographer who'd stumbled into a nightmare. And yet the image of Amara's oblivious smile as she'd kissed Lucas goodbye haunted her, The way the woman had absent-mindedly hummed a lullaby while buckling the twins into their car seats, utterly unaware that the man she loved might have stolen her from another life. A sudden movement in the upstairs window snapped Claire's attention back. A shadow passing behind the half-open blinds, tall and unmistakably Lucas, his silhouette pausing as if sensing her presence, and Claire's breath hitched, her body pressing deeper into the car seat as if she could vanish into the upholstery. Did he see me? But then the shadow moved again, this time cradling a small squirming form, Noah or Eli, and her heart ached at the tender way Lucas rocked the child, his head bowing to press a kiss to the baby's forehead, a gesture so at odds with the monster in the articles that Claire's resolve wavered. What if I'm wrong? The doubt slithered in, cold and insidious. But then her phone buzzed violently in her lap, Detective Reyes's name flashing on the screen alongside a terse message. Do not approach. Surveillance already in place. Suspect linked to multiple disappearances. Stay in your car. Claire's blood ran cold. Surveillance? And her eyes darted to the unmarked black van parked 3 houses down, its tinted windows hiding God knew who. The realization that this was bigger than she'd imagined sending a fresh wave of terror through her. But before she could process it, the porch light of Lucas's house flicked off, plunging the front yard into darkness, and the front door creaked open, revealing Amara, no, Layla, her braids piled into a messy bun, her brown skin washed pale by the streetlights as she stepped barefoot onto the wet driveway, her arms wrapped around herself against the chill. Claire's pulse skyrocketed. Is she running? But then Amara tilted her face up to the rain, her eyes closed, her lips moving in a silent whisper, and the raw anguish on her face was so profound that Claire's hand flew to the door handle. She knows. She remembers something. Until a deep voice called from inside the house. Lucas's tone honey-sweet, but edged with something darker. Come back inside, love. You'll catch cold. Amara flinched, her eyes snapping open, and for one heart-stopping second, she stared directly at Claire's car, her gaze unfocused but piercing, as if she could sense the truth hovering just beyond her reach. Then, shoulders slumping, she turned and disappeared inside, the door clicking shut behind her like a prison cell locking. Claire exhaled a shuddering breath, her fingers tightening around her phone as she typed a reply to Reyes. She's in danger. We have to move tonight. But as she hit send, a flicker of movement caught her eye. The upstairs blinds twitching apart, Lucas's icy blue eyes staring directly at her through the rain-streaked window, his expression unreadable, but his grip on the blinds turning his knuckles white. He knows. The engine roared to life as Claire slammed the gear shift into drive, her tires screeching against the asphalt as she peeled away. The last thing she saw in the rearview mirror, the silhouette of Lucas pulling out his phone, his lips moving in a call that could only mean one thing. He's covering his tracks. And Amara and those babies were running out of time. Claire's tires screeched against the slick pavement as she swerved onto the highway, her rear-view mirror reflecting the shrinking glow of Lucas's neighborhood, but not fast enough to escape the image burned into her mind. Those piercing blue eyes locking onto hers through the rain-streaked window, his expression morphing from shock to something far more dangerous. A predator realizing the hunt had reversed. The steering wheel vibrated under her white-knuckled grip as she fumbled for her phone. her thumb smearing rainwater across the screen as Detective Reyes's name flashed again. Call failed. The signal lost in the storm's fury, and Claire cursed, slamming her palm against the wheel as the reality of her mistake crashed over her. He saw me. He knows I know. The dashboard clock blinked 10:03 p.m., each passing second a ticking time bomb, and her mind raced with horrifying scenarios. Lucas bundling Amara and the twins into the car, vanishing into the night. Lucas destroying evidence. Lucas doing something far worse to the woman who might not even remember her real name. A sudden vibration against her thigh made her gasp. Reyes was calling back, his voice crackling through the car speakers, tense and clipped. "Claire, listen carefully. We've had eyes on Bennett for months. He's not just a suspect in Layla's case. He's linked to 3 other disappearances, all women with no family, all last seen with a kind stranger matching his description. Where are you now?" Claire's breath hitched as she merged onto the freeway, the neon signs of an all-night diner blurring past. I left their neighborhood, but he saw me, Mark. He looked right at my car and—" Her voice broke as a new terror struck her. The twins. Those innocent babies, their giggles still echoing in her memory. "We have to get her out. Tonight." Reyes exhaled sharply. "We can't move without proof. The tattoo's circumstantial, and if we spook him, he'll bolt or take her with him. Meet me at the station. Now." The call ended, leaving Claire in suffocating silence, the rain pounding the roof like 1,000 accusing fingers. But as she passed a dimly lit bus stop, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure hunched on the bench, their face obscured by a hood, but the posture, the slope of the shoulders. Amara. Claire's pulse skyrocketed as she slammed the brakes, the car hydroplaning before jerking to a stop, her heart in her throat as she flung the door open, the rain soaking her instantly as she sprinted toward the bench, only to find it empty, a tattered grocery bag fluttering in the wind. Hallucinating from adrenaline, she chastised herself. But as she turned back, her headlights illuminated something glinting on the wet pavement. A silver locket, its chain broken, and with trembling hands, Claire pried it open, the photo inside making her legs buckle. A younger Amara, Layla, smiling beside an older couple. The care inscription reading, "To our daughter, always loved, Mom and Dad." The locket was warm, as if recently dropped, and Claire's head snapped up, scanning the shadows. She was here. She's running. But from Lucas, or her past. A distant engine roared to life, and Claire's blood turned to ice as a black SUV, Lucas's SUV, peeled out of a side street, its headlights cutting through the rain like searchlights. Without thinking, Claire dove behind a dumpster, her breath ragged as the SUV slowed near the bus stop, the window rolling down to reveal Lucas's profile. His jaw clenched as he scanned the empty street. For one endless minute, he waited, the tension coiling like a snake, until his phone rang, the muffled voice on the other end, feminine, pleading, making him stiffen before he growled, "I'm coming home. Lock the doors." The SUV sped off, leaving Claire shaking, the locket biting into her palm. Amara's not there. She escaped. But as sirens wailed in the distance, Claire realized the horrifying truth. Lucas wasn't just a suspect. He was a man who'd built a life on lies, and if Amara remembered who she was, that life was crumbling, and predators were most dangerous when cornered. The locket's chain slithered from her fingers as she sprinted back to her car, her phone already dialing Reyes. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a race against death. The locket's delicate chain slithered through Claire's fingers like liquid silver as she pressed her back against the graffiti-stained wall of the abandoned laundromat. The distant wail of police sirens mingling with the frantic hammering of her heart as she watched Lucas's SUV disappear into the storm-washed night, the taillights bleeding red into the darkness like warning beacons. He was hunting her now, and if he found her before the police did, she'd vanish just like the others. Rain lashed against her face as she fumbled with her phone, her waterlogged screen refusing to respond to her desperate taps until finally, Detective Reyes's gruff voice crackled through the speaker, his words clipped and urgent. "Claire, where the hell are you? We've got units en route to Bennett's house, but you need to get your ass to the station now. This guy's got a record a mile long under aliases we're still untangling. And if he thinks you're the key to losing everything, you're already in his crosshairs." Claire's breath came in ragged gasps as she clutched the locket tighter, the metal edges biting into her palm, grounding her in the moment as she peered around the corner toward the empty bus stop, her mind racing with the terrifying possibility that Layla, had been here mere minutes ago, running barefoot through the storm, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the fractured memories of a life stolen from her. "I found something," she whispered into the phone, her voice trembling as she pried open the locket again. The photograph inside showing a beaming Layla sandwiched between an older Hispanic couple at what looked like a graduation party, the date scrawled on the back, June 2018, confirming this was taken mere months before her disappearance. "It's hers, Mark. She was here. She's remembering." Reyes swore under his breath, the sound of shuffling papers and barking officers in the background. "Listen to me carefully. Do not engage if you see her. Bennett's file suggests he's ex-military, trained in psychological manipulation, and the women he targets. They're all vulnerable, isolated, easy to control. If Layla's regaining her memory, she's in more danger than ever." A sudden noise from the alleyway made Claire freeze, a soft, broken sob, the kind that came from a place so deep it shattered the soul. Her head whipped toward the sound, her pulse roaring in her ears as she took a hesitant step forward, the rain masking her footsteps as she inched closer to the dumpster where the noise had originated. "Claire! Claire! Damn it! Answer me!" Reyes's voice was distant now, the phone slipping from her numb fingers as she rounded the corner and saw her, Layla, curled into herself like a wounded animal. Her braids plastered to her face, her yellow dress soaked through and clinging to her shivering frame, her arms wrapped around her knees as she rocked back and forth, her lips moving in a silent mantra. Claire's throat tightened as she took another step, the woman's head snapping up at the sound, her dark eyes wide with a feral terror that morphed into confusion, then dawning horror as she stared at the locket in Claire's hand. You know me," Layla whispered, the words more statement than question, her voice raw from disuse or screaming. Claire couldn't tell. "That's my mother. That's me in that photo, but I don't remember taking it." A violent tremor racked her body as she pressed her palms to her temples, her nails digging into her skin as if she could physically claw the memories free. "Lucas said I had no family. He said I was nothing before him. But then I heard the twins crying tonight, and suddenly I knew that song I sing to them. My abuela used to sing it to me. And I—" Her words dissolved into a gasp as her gaze locked onto something over Claire's shoulder, her face draining of all color. Claire didn't need to turn to know what she was seeing. The slow crawl of headlights against the alley walls, the engine purring like a stalking panther. Lucas had found them. Time slowed as Layla's hand shot out, her fingers ice-cold and trembling as they closed around Claire's wrist with surprising strength, her voice a fractured plea. "He'll kill you if he sees you. Run! And if you can't run—" She shoved the locket back into Claire's hand, the metal now hiding a folded slip of paper torn from a grocery bag, the hastily scrawled address barely legible under the streetlight. "Find my father. Tell him the hummingbird flies at midnight." The headlights brightened, the engine revving, and Layla did something then that shattered Claire's heart. She smoothed her dress, wiped her tears, and forced her face into a vacant smile, the kind of smile that said, "I remember nothing, I am no threat," before stepping out into the open, her arms raised in surrender as Lucas's car door slammed. "I'm here, my love," she called, her voice sweet and hollow. "I just got confused again." Claire pressed herself into the shadows, her hand clamped over her mouth to stifle a sob as she watched Lucas stride forward, his expression unreadable as he cradled Layla's face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears that could have been rain or terror. His voice a velvet murmur. "You scared me, Carino. Come home. The boys miss their mama." And just like that, Layla was gone, ushered into the car with a tenderness that made Claire's stomach churn, the door closing with a soft click that sounded like a coffin ceiling. The taillights vanished around the corner, leaving Claire alone in the alley with the locket, the address, and the devastating realization. Layla had remembered enough to pretend she hadn't, to protect Claire, to protect her children, and that act of sacrifice had just signed her death warrant. Reyes's voice echoed from the phone at her feet. "Claire, we've got a problem. Bennett's house is empty. He's gone, and we just found blood in the basement." The phone screen flickered like a dying heartbeat, where it lay face up in the alley's grime, Detective Reyes's voice tinny and distorted through the speaker. "Blood in the basement, Claire. Do you hear me? We're talking old stains, tools. This isn't his first time." But Claire couldn't move, couldn't breathe, her body locked in horrified paralysis as the echo of Lucas's car engine faded into the storm, the weight of Layla's sacrifice crushing her chest like a vice. The folded scrap of paper in her palm burned like a brand, the address smudged but legible, 217 Holloway Lane, and those 6 words Layla had whispered. The hummingbird flies at midnight, coiled in her mind like a lifeline thrown into a hurricane. Rainwater seeped through her clothes, the cold a distant nuisance compared to the acid churning in her gut as she finally snatched up the phone, her voice raw with urgency. "Mark, listen." Layla remembered. She gave me an address, some kind of code phrase. Her father might be there. We have to go. Now. Reyes exhaled sharply, the sound of squealing tires underscoring his next words. "Holloway Lane. That's Jacob Martinez's old butcher shop. Closed down after Layla vanished. Claire, wait. We've got units scrambling. But Bennett could be heading there too if Layla tipped him off." But Claire was already running, her sneakers slapping against the flooded pavement as she vaulted into her car, the locket's chain tangled around her fingers like a rosary as she punched the address into her GPS, 12 minutes away, her mind racing with scenarios, each more terrible than the last. Was Layla buying time, leading Lucas into a trap, or had she just signed her own death warrant? The engine roared to life as she peeled onto the deserted street, the wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour, her high beams cutting through the darkness to reveal glimpses of the storm's wrath, trash cans toppled like dominoes, stoplights swinging like nooses, the city holding its breath. A sudden flash of movement to her right, a shadow darting between buildings, made her jerk the wheel, her heart in her throat, until she realized it was just a stray dog, its ribs visible under matted fur as it limped into the night. Like Layla, she thought bitterly. Another soul lost in the storm. The GPS chirped. Turn left in 500 feet. And Claire's grip tightened on the wheel as Holloway Lane materialized ahead. A graveyard of boarded-up storefronts and flickering street lamps, the skeletal remains of a neighborhood forgotten by time. Number 217 was barely standing, the faded sign above the door, Martinez and Son Meats, hanging by one rusted chain. The glass, windows long since shattered and replaced with rotting plywood. Claire killed the lights and rolled to a stop half a block away, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears as she dialed Reyes again. I'm here. No sign of Lucas yet. Her words died as a flicker of candlelight illuminated the shop's second-floor apartment window, a silhouette moving behind the tattered curtains. Someone was home. The locket seemed to grow heavier in her pocket as she crept towards the building, the rain masking her footsteps, her mind screaming at her to wait for backup. But Layla's face, that hollow smile she'd worn like armor, flashed behind her eyelids. No time. The alley beside the shop reeked of spoiled meat and wet concrete, the fire escape ladder hanging just within reach. Claire's fingers grazed the cold metal when a hand clamped over her mouth from behind, yanking her into the shadows with terrifying ease. A man's voice, not Lucas's, older, rougher, growling in her ear. Say the phrase, or I snap your neck right here. Claire's vision blurred with panic as she choked out the words. The hummingbird flies at midnight. And just like that, the grip vanished. The man stepped into the dim light, his face a roadmap of grief, deep-set eyes, salt and pepper stubble, a scar running through his brow, and Claire knew instantly. This was Jacob Martinez, and in his shaking hands, cocked and ready, was a shotgun. You saw my girl, he whispered, not a question, but a prayer. Where is she? Behind them, tires screeched. Lucas's SUV rounded the corner. The shotgun's barrel trembled in Jacob Martinez's calloused hands as his gaze darted from Claire's rain-streaked face to the black SUV skidding to a stop outside his derelict butcher shop, its headlights cutting through the storm like searchlights hunting escapees. And in that suspended second between heartbeats, Claire saw the man's entire history of grief flash across his face. 3 years of sleepless nights, of police reports gathering dust, of a daughter's favorite sweater still folded in a drawer, waiting for her return. All crystallizing into one fractured whisper. He has her. The SUV's door flung open, but it wasn't Lucas who emerged. It was Layla, her yellow dress now torn and muddied, her braids unraveling into wild tendrils as she sprinted toward the shop, with the frantic grace of a woman running for her life, her bare feet slapping against the wet pavement as she screamed, "Papi! Papi!" In a voice that wasn't the hollow doll's tone she'd used with Lucas, but something raw and primal, the voice of a little girl who'd woken from a nightmare. Jacob dropped the gun with a clatter that echoed through the alley, his arms opening wide just as Layla crashed into him, her knees giving way as she sobbed into his chest, her fingers clutching at his stained work shirt like she was drowning. And he was the only solid thing in a world gone liquid with lies. Claire stood frozen, her own tears mingling with the rain as she watched Jacob press his lips to his daughter's hair, his shoulders heaving with silent tears as he murmured Spanish endearments, mi vida, mi corazoncito, his thick fingers gently probing the fresh bruises circling Layla's wrists before he locked eyes with Claire over her shoulder, his expression shifting from joy to fury. "Where are my nietos?" he demanded, and Layla whimpered, her voice breaking as she gasped. "Lucas took them. He knew, Papi. He knew I remembered. And when I tried to grab the boys, he—" A gunshot cracked through the night, the shop's remaining window exploding in a shower of glass as Lucas's silhouette materialized from the storm, his usually impeccable hair plastered to his forehead, his blue eyes glowing with feral intensity in the flickering street lamp as he leveled a pistol at Jacob's chest. "Layla," he crooned, the name dripping with poisoned honey. "You're not well, Carino. The doctors said stress would trigger these episodes." He took a step forward, his polished loafers crunching over broken glass, and Claire's stomach twisted at the sight of the twins' tiny socks peeking from his coat pocket. A sickening trophy. "Come home now, and I won't have to punish Abuelo for kidnapping you." Layla shuddered, but straightened, wiping her face with trembling hands as she turned to face the monster who'd stolen her life. And in that moment, Claire saw the woman she must have been before the amnesia, spine steeled, chin lifted, a fighter. "You want me?" Layla spat, stepping protectively in front of Jacob. "Then lower the gun. Or are you afraid of an unarmed woman?" "Mi amor." The taunt hit its mark. Lucas's jaw twitched as he pocketed the pistol with exaggerated calm. But Claire saw the danger coiling in his muscles, the way his free hand hovered near his waistband where another weapon surely waited. Behind him, shadows moved, police cruisers or Lucas's reinforcements. Layla seized the hesitation, her voice dropping to a whisper only Claire and Jacob could hear. "The basement freezer. The false back. Proof of what he is." Then, louder, her arms spread in surrender. "I'll go. Just let me say goodbye." Lucas nodded, smugness oozing into his smile as Layla turned to hug Jacob, her lips moving against his ear in a frantic whisper as she pressed something small and metallic into his palm. A locket twin to Claire's, its hinges pried open to reveal a flash drive glinting in the dim light. "For the police," she breathed, before pulling away with a final desperate look at Claire. "Save my boys." Then she walked toward Lucas, her steps steady, her head high, and when he reached to stroke her cheek in triumph, she didn't flinch. But Claire saw the truth in her eyes. This wasn't surrender. It was a distraction. Jacob's grip tightened around the flash drive as Lucas's laughter rang through the alley, the sound abruptly severed by the wail of approaching sirens. Lucas's head snapped toward the noise, his mask slipping for one revealing second. Fear, before he yanked Layla against his chest, his pistol now pressed to her temple as he backed toward the SUV. "You'll never see those babies again," he snarled, and in the chaos of screeching tires and shouting officers, Claire made her choice. While Lucas was distracted, She sprinted for the shop's back entrance, Jacob at her heels, the twins' cries echoing in her mind. The basement awaited. And so did the truth. The butcher shop's back door groaned like a wounded animal as Claire and Jacob burst through it, the stench of decades-old blood and rusted metal assaulting their senses as they stumbled down the crumbling basement stairs, the only light coming from Claire's phone flashlight, its beam shaking violently as it revealed horrors straight from a nightmare. Rusted meat hooks swaying from the ceiling like grotesque wind chimes, stained concrete floors etched with dark, unidentifiable streaks, and at the far end, the industrial freezer Layla had whispered about, its heavy steel door slightly ajar, as if waiting to swallow them whole. Jacob's breath came in ragged gasps as he shoved the flash drive into Claire's hands, his voice cracking under the weight of decades of paternal instinct and helpless rage. "Take this to the police. I'm getting my daughter back." But Claire grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his flesh as she pointed the light at the freezer's exterior. The scratches around the handle weren't from wear and tear. They were claw marks, deep and frantic, as if someone had fought to escape its icy jaws. "We need proof first," she hissed, her mind flashing to the twins, to Layla's hollow smile as she sacrificed herself, to Reyes's warning about other missing women, and with a strength she didn't know she possessed, she wrenched the freezer door open, the cold air billowing out in a ghostly mist that revealed not sides of beef, but a hidden panel dangling loose from the back wall, its screws freshly pried open. By Layla? By another victim? And behind it, a trove of unspeakable evidence. Polaroids of women with duct-taped mouths and hollow eyes, each dated and labeled in Lucas's meticulous handwriting. Driver's licenses stacked like playing cards, and a leather-bound ledger whose pages detailed transactions with initials D.M. Damon Martinez, Layla's ex. Next of sums of money that made Claire's stomach heave. But it was the last photo that stopped her heart. A younger Lucas in military uniform, shaking hands with a man whose face was half-shadowed, but whose serpent and rose tattoo coiled unmistakably up his forearm. A partner? A mentor? And beneath it, a newspaper clipping. Local soldier, discharged after psychological breakdown. Jacob's choked sob snapped her back to the present as he lifted a tiny pink hair elastic from the pile, its glittering hearts barely visible under layers of dust. "This was Layla's from when she was 6, he whispered, his voice breaking as he pressed it to his lips like a rosary. Outside, the sirens crescendoed, followed by the unmistakable sound of gunfire, Reyes's team engaging Lucas, and Claire's blood turned to ice as a new noise joined the chaos, the high-pitched wail of a baby screaming. The twins. Jacob was already moving, snatching a cleaver from the wall with the lethal precision of a man who'd once deboned carcasses for a living, his grief hardening into something terrifyingly focused. "You take the evidence," he growled, shoving the ledger into Claire's arms. "I'm getting my family." But as Claire turned to flee up the stairs, her foot caught on something half buried in the dirt floor, a glint of silver, and she bent to retrieve it, her pulse stuttering as she recognized the delicate chain and sapphire pendant Layla had worn in her missing persons photo. It was still warm. Somewhere above them, a floorboard creaked. Someone else was in the shop, and they were not with the police. The sapphire pendant burned in Claire's palm like a live coal as the creaking footsteps overhead grew closer, each groan of the ancient floorboards ratcheting her pulse into a deafening drumbeat that threatened to drown out even the distant gunfire still echoing from the street. Someone was moving through the butcher shop with deliberate, predatory patience, their shadow stretching long and thin down the stairwell as Claire pressed herself against the freezer's icy wall, her breath coming in shallow, panicked bursts that crystallized in the frigid air while Jacob stood frozen beside her, the cleaver in his grip reflecting the dim light in jagged arcs as his eyes darted between the stairs and the trove of evidence they'd uncovered. The Polaroids of Lucas's victims scattered at their feet like a grotesque mosaic of suffering. The footsteps paused directly above them, followed by the unmistakable sound of a pistol's slide being racked, and Claire's blood turned to ice as a voice, not Lucas's, but eerily familiar, hummed a lullaby off-key, the same one Layla had sung to the twins in the park, the melody twisting into something sinister in this tomb of horrors. Little bird, fly back home." The singer chuckled, low and rough, as something heavy was dragged across the floor. A body? A weapon? Before the stairs began to groan under slow, deliberate weight, and Claire's phone chose that moment to vibrate violently in her pocket, the screen illuminating just enough to reveal the fresh blood smeared on the freezer door's interior, the handprints small and desperate, as if a child had tried to claw their way out. Jacob's face went ashen as he reached for a Polaroid they'd missed, a woman with Layla's eyes, but greying hair, bound and gagged in what looked like a basement, the date on the bottom reading 1998. "Dios mio, it's my Rosa," he choked, his wife, Layla's mother, missing for 26 years and presumed dead, her face staring back at them from the abyss of Lucas's collection. Above them, the footsteps resumed, now accompanied by a new sound, the soft, hiccuping cry of a baby, and Claire's soul fractured as she recognized Eli's distinctive whimper, the realization hitting her like a bullet. Lucas hadn't come alone. The shadow on the stairs lengthened, the hummed lullaby growing louder, and as the first black boot appeared on the top step, Jacob suddenly moved, shoving Claire deeper into the freezer's darkness with surprising strength as he hissed, "The back wall! There's a crawl space Layla used as a girl. Go!" Before turning to face the stairs, his cleaver raised not in anger, but in heartbreaking resignation, his final words to Claire barely audible over the creaking steps. "Tell my daughter. Her papa kept his promise." The freezer door began to swing shut, just as the intruder reached the basement floor, a man with Lucas's piercing blue eyes, but harder features, his serpent and rose tattoo peeking from his collar as he cradled a squirming Eli in one arm and a Glock in the other, his smirk widening as he took in Jacob's stance. "Well, well, the butcher finally comes to carve," the man drawled, his voice dripping with mockery, as Eli wailed, tiny fists flailing. But it was the insignia on his jacket that stopped Claire's heart, a military patch matching the one in Lucas's photo. This was DM. Damon Mercer, Lucas's handler, partner, or worse. The freezer door clicked shut, plunging Claire into darkness, just as the first gunshot rang out. The sound muffled through the thick steel as she frantically felt along the back wall, her fingers finding not smooth metal, but rotted wood, giving way to a narrow tunnel. Layla's childhood escape route, as another shot echoed, followed by the sickening thud of a body hitting concrete. Choking back a sob, Claire crawled into the suffocating passage, the flash drive and ledger clutched to her chest as Eli's cries faded behind her. The last thing she heard before the darkness swallowed her whole being, Damon's amused purr. "Don't worry, abuelo. We'll make sure Layla gets all the pieces." The tunnel smelled of damp earth and childhood secrets, its walls barely wide enough for her shoulders, as she inched forward blindly, her mind racing with the horrific puzzle pieces. Rosa's photo, the military connection, Damon's sudden appearance. But one truth burned brighter than the rest. Layla had never been Lucas's first victim, only his longest obsession. Somewhere ahead, the tunnel promised escape. Somewhere behind, Jacob was likely dead. And in Claire's shaking hands lay the only hope of ending this nightmare, if she could survive long enough to tell the world. The darkness of the crawl space swallowed Claire whole, the musty air thick with the scent of damp earth and childhood secrets long buried as she dragged herself forward on elbows and knees, the ledger and flash drive clutched against her chest like sacred relics, her pulse a frantic drumbeat in her ears as the muffled sounds of Damon's laughter and Eli's whimpers faded behind her, replaced by the skittering of rats and the occasional crumble of loose soil from the tunnel's rotting wooden supports. How many times had a young Layla crawled through this very passage, giggling as she hid from her father during games of hide-and-seek, unaware of the horrors that would one day send her fleeing back to it in desperation. Claire's phone was dead, its glow extinguished the moment the freezer door had sealed shut, leaving her blind in the suffocating blackness, every inch forward a gamble as her fingers brushed against jagged rocks and the occasional slick, unidentifiable mass that made her stomach heave, the tunnel narrowing further until the walls pressed against her shoulders like a coffin, her breath coming in ragged gasps as panic threatened to paralyze her. What if this led nowhere? What if Damon knew about the tunnel and was waiting at the other end? A sudden, sharp pain lanced through her palm as she sliced it open on a rusted nail protruding from the wood, the metallic tang of blood mixing with the stale air. But the pain was a welcome anchor to reality, a reminder that she was still alive, still fighting, even as Jacob's final words echoed in her mind. "Tell my daughter." Her papa kept his promise, and with renewed determination, she pressed on, the tunnel beginning to slope upward slightly, the air growing marginally fresher as a faint, almost imperceptible draft teased her sweat-drenched face. Then her outstretched fingers met empty space. The tunnel wall had ended, opening into a void, and Claire barely stifled a sob of relief as she realized she'd reached the other side, her hands flailing in the darkness until they connected with a wooden panel, its surface rough with age but unmistakably a door. The tiny hinges groaning in protest as she pushed against it with all her remaining strength, the panel giving way with a splintering crack as blinding sunlight flooded the tunnel, forcing her to squeeze her eyes shut against the sudden assault of light after what felt like an eternity in the abyss. When she finally dared to open them, blinking against the glare, she found herself staring into the overgrown backyard of the butcher shop, the tall grass and wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze, the scene almost peaceful, if not for the distant wail of sirens and the acrid tang of smoke still hanging in the air from the confrontation out front. But Claire had no time to savor her escape. Not when the ledger in her arms held the key to dismantling Lucas and Damon's empire of suffering. Not when Eli and Noah were still in their clutches. Not when Layla was somewhere out there. playing a deadly game of pretend to keep her babies alive. Wincing, Claire hauled herself out of the tunnel, her clothes torn and filthy, her bloodied palm leaving crimson smears on the grass as she stumbled to her feet, her legs trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion. But before she could take a step toward the street, a glint of metal caught her eye. A small, silver charm half buried in the dirt near the tunnel's exit, its surface tarnished, but still recognizable as a tiny hummingbird, its wings spread mid-flight. "The hummingbird flies at midnight," Layla had whispered. Was this the token she'd meant? A sob clawed at Claire's throat as she pocketed the charm, her mind racing. Had Layla left this here as a child, a marker for some future escape she'd never get to make? The sound of approaching footsteps snapped her back to the present, and Claire ducked behind a rusted-out car just as two figures rounded the corner of the shop. Reyes, his face grim, his weapon drawn, and beside him, a sobbing woman with Layla's eyes but streaks of grey in her braids, her hands cuffed behind her back despite her obvious injuries. "Please, you have to believe me. I didn't know what he was," the woman begged, her voice raw with tears, and Claire's breath hitched. Rosa, Layla's mother, alive? But Reyes's response was ice-cold. "Save it for the interrogation, Rosalind. We know you've been working with Damon for years." Claire's mind reeled. Was Layla's mother part of this? But then the woman lifted her head, her gaze locking onto Claire's hiding spot with terrifying precision, and her next words were a whisper only Claire could hear, carried on the wind like a ghost's lament. "Find the red ledger. It's all there." Then she was gone, shoved into a police car as Reyes barked orders into his radio, his words sending a chill down Claire's spine. "Lucas Bennett is down, but Mercer has the twins. I repeat, Mercer is mobile with 2 infants." Claire's vision blurred with tears as she clutched the hummingbird charm tighter, the pieces of the nightmare finally falling into place. This was bigger than one psychopath, bigger than a few missing women. This was a network, and Layla and her children were just the latest pawns in a game that had been playing out for decades. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine roared to life, tires squealing as it sped away, and Claire knew, with bone-deep certainty, that Eli and Noah were inside. The red ledger, the real ledger, was out there too, and she was the only one left to find it. The hummingbird charm dug into Claire's palm like a shard of broken glass as she crouched behind the rusted car, her lungs burning with the effort of staying silent while the police swarmed the butcher shop's perimeter, their radios crackling with frantic updates. "All units, suspect Damon Mercer is heading southbound on I-90 with 2 infants. Vehicle is a black 2021 Tahoe, Pennsylvania plates." The words slicing through her like a blade as she pictured Eli and Noah strapped into their car seats, oblivious to the monster driving them toward God knows what fresh hell, their tiny fingers still sticky from the apple slices Layla had fed them in the park, what felt like a lifetime ago. The red ledger, Rosa's desperate plea, loomed in her mind like a spectre, its secrets the only key to dismantling whatever nightmare operation Lucas and Damon had built. But where would Damon take the twins? Some prearranged safe house? A buyer? The military base from the photos? Claire's bloodied fingers fumbled for her dead phone, her breath hitching as she realized the only person who might know the answer was currently being shoved into the back of a squad car. Rosalind Martinez, Layla's supposedly dead mother, her face a roadmap of grief and guilt, and with a grit she didn't know she possessed, Claire waited for the cops to disperse before sprinting toward the abandoned diner across the street, its broken windows and peeling vinyl booths offering both cover and a vantage point to watch the interrogation unfold through the squad car's window. Rosalind's head was bowed, her braids, so like Layla's, curtaining her face as she rocked back and forth, her lips moving in silent prayer or confession. But when she suddenly lifted her gaze to the diner's shattered storefront, her dark eyes locking onto Claire's with eerie precision, her mouth formed two unmistakable words: "Train Depot." Then, with a deliberate slowness, she raised her cuffed hands and tapped her wrist 3 times, a countdown, a meeting time. Before Reyes yanked the car door open, his voice sharp as he demanded, "Who are you signaling, Rosalind?" But Claire was already moving, slinking through the diner's back kitchen, her mind racing. The old freight depot on 12th Street, slated for demolition next week, its labyrinth of cargo containers the perfect place to stash hostages or evidence. But as she pushed through the exit door into the alley, a hand clamped over her mouth from behind, a familiar voice hissing in her ear. "You're really bad at stealth, photographer." And Claire nearly sobbed with relief as she whirled to face Detective Reyes, his usually impeccable suit now streaked with soot and blood, his grip on her arm bruising as he shoved a burner phone into her hands. "Rosalind's playing both sides," he muttered, his eyes scanning the alley for threats. "She says the red ledger's in Depot 7, but it's a trap. Damon's expecting you. Here's what we're really doing." His plan unfolded in terse whispers. Reyes would stage a very public arrest of Claire at the depot's entrance, drawing Damon's attention while a SWAT team flanked the building. But the real mission was the ledger. "It's not just names, Claire. It's shipping manifests, kids, women, all routed through military bases." Claire's stomach roiled as the scope of the horror dawned on her. This wasn't just 2 psychopaths. It was a network. And Layla's twins were about to become inventory. Reyes's radio crackled. "Suspect vehicle spotted near the depot." And with a final bone-crushing squeeze of her hand, he was gone, melting into the shadows as Claire pocketed the burner and the hummingbird charm, her feet carrying her toward the depot on pure adrenaline, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of blood and bruise. The depot loomed ahead, its chain-link fence sagging in defeat, the skeletal remains of freight trains hulking in the twilight like dead giants. And as Claire ducked behind a stack of rotting pallets, her pulse spiked. There, near Depot 7's rusted doors, stood Damon, his military posture rigid as he cradled a sleeping Eli against his chest, the serpent and rose tattoo peeking from his collar as he checked his watch. 3 taps, midnight. Was he waiting for a drop-off? A buyer? Claire's fingers tightened around the charm, Layla's childhood totem, her silent SOS, when a new sound split the air. A muffled whimper from inside the depot. Noah, and then a voice that stopped. Her heart, Layla's voice, raw with pain but ferocious as a storm. "Touch my son again, and I'll carve out your other eye, cabron." Damon chuckled, adjusting his grip on Eli as he called over his shoulder. "You always did have your mother's fire, Misha. Pity she chose the ledger over you." The depot doors creaked open, revealing Layla framed in the doorway, her wrists bound but her spine steel, her face a mask of fury and triumph as she rasped, "Funny, She said the same about you. And then the world exploded in gunfire.